Tony, welcome. Great to have you on.
Yeah, good to be here, Joe.
We spoke once about 2 years ago, and I remember you saying, "I'm happier than I've ever been," which was kind of a nice way to sum it up. And now you've done your documentary. What was the motivation for doing it? What was kind of the driver behind it?
Like most things, Joe, what was the motivation behind my book when I first did it with Paul Kimmage back in what 2000, 2001? Um, I just felt like I had a lot to say, and going back to that time of having having Paul Kimmage sitting opposite me and telling me what the hell did I do on a book, or more politely, but what the hell did I want to do a book with you for? And we started talking. And I was really proud of the book. I think a lot of people got a lot of pleasure out of it. And taking it from there is I saw Liam Brady's documentary and I really enjoyed it. And obviously Jack Charlton had one as well, Finding Jack. And from that, I spoke to Sean Casey, who was involved in Liam Brady's um, it's a documentary really more than it's a short film.
Mm.
So the inspiration come from there. And Sean approached me about my career, and he made me feel it was really weird, Joe, because he made me feel I had a better career than I did. Do you know what I mean? It was really weird. I thought, yeah, it weren't that bad, really, was it? With all the ups and downs.
You also have this great leaning towards openness as well. So I can see why they approached you because open book, it would be
Yeah.
good, bad, and different. Because I do remember when we spoke 2 years ago, and you were at the end of what had been a tough time in your life at that stage, and you told us about it a bit, and you were saying, "Geez, I hadn't even intended to say all this. I just found myself saying it."
Yeah, I've always been. Sometimes my mouth runs away, and I get a bit carried away and excited, and sometimes disillusioned, and all the. I just think I like being open, and then you can make of me what you like. It hasn't done me bad.
No.
Put it that way. And a lot of us hold stuff in, and sometimes there's bitterness there and laughter, and I did, as I showed in the film, I had some very difficult periods in my time in my career that you could obviously take that back to the book, where some of the stories that were told in the book and then relaying it back in the film, that I just I felt proud, really, really proud of the book, and I feel the same way about the film. That
Mm.
that it's a great story, the island connection, and just that period 88 to 94 and beyond until I retired at 2000 just was an amazing place, honestly, Joe, to be. It was like when people say, oh, I was around in the 60s when the Beatles were playing and the Rolling Stones. The 80s and the early 90s felt like that for us players. We knew we were in the greatest period of our lives.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you about that and the reunion recently, and all of it really. When you're making a documentary, I presume more so than most of us who just we get in the car and something pops into our head and you might think about the past for a while, but then you have to get out and get petrol, and life kind of rumbles on. Obviously, making a documentary, a little bit akin to the book, I'm sure you're thinking about your life in quite an intense, concerted way. Did
Yeah.
anything new occur to you or strike you about your life?
Um, well, yeah, I think I realized that I was the common denominator in some of the things that went disastrously wrong, personal, and also in my club career at certain clubs. And when you foul, my one of my biggest attributes is that when I foul, I really take it on board and look at myself first. And it's sort of obviously self-criticism, but I also feel like you've got to answer your own failings first. You've got to come to terms with it. Other people will write and talk about you. That's just life. But I always felt that I had to address that straight away myself, just to come to sort of some understanding of why things had gone wrong, why things went wrong at Celtic. Why did you know, the Celtic experience was a very odd one because everything was in line to be perfect. The Irish centre forward goes and plays for Liam Brady, who was a friend of mine at Celtic Park, and it was a new challenge for me. And it all felt so right, and yet it couldn't have worked out, in a more worse way. Just was a disastrous time of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that kind of propensity for well, if I'm the common denominator, that kind of self-reflection, like not everyone has that. Because another memory I had when I was just thinking back to our conversation 2 years ago was you had said like around the time of the pandemic that you'd been reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for
Yeah.
Life, and one of his rules that kind of struck you as impactful was always tell the truth. Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
remember you
Well,
said,
I'd never tried that,
yeah,
Joe.
I mean, I'm going to try that. I am going to try that around the time of the pandemic. And I think you felt better for it when we spoke. How's that all washed out in the end?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get me in trouble anymore, Joe. I got nothing to answer to. My wife knows I play poker all the time. Joe, she knows what I do. She knows what I lose and what I win, and I don't lie. And there was periods of time in my life, and I didn't cover myself in glory. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you have two divorces, there's a lot going on in between, isn't there? It's not just you're unlucky or it didn't work out because of. There were lots of issues why them two marriages failed, and I was a bigger part as they were of why it didn't work out. There were, of course, it wasn't just all me, but there was a lot of things that I do in at a certain time that, like I said, I didn't cover myself in glory. And the idea of just going, there was big moments in I sort of sit down and I don't like, you can always give an example like you can go, oh, a leopard never changes his spots. Well, that in itself is nonsense because there are people who completely change, whether it's through drink or gambling or stops doing something. So to me, that was all nonsense. Whereas, yeah, you can maybe go the general way that most people don't, but to say the leopard never changes his spots was a challenge in itself to me because I'd never had a period in my life where I said, well, I'm not going to lie. Whatever the consequence, I am not going to lie. So that was the big change for me when I read Jordan Peterson's book on that particular one, the 12 Rules of Life, where I thought I'm gonna, there's lots of other stuff in the book, but there was that particular thing struck me of why don't I just give that a go and see where it takes me? And
We
it's taken me in a far better place.
we had Tony Adams with us recently at a live show, and he had much the same journey on that front, for different reasons possibly. But he had this great line that he lives his life by now. He said, "You're only as sick as the secrets you keep."
Yeah.
Great, and he's like, "And I'm light as a bird now,"
I know. There's from my from my sometimes the way I think is that I always look for these proverbs, if you like, or that some really are profound, which sit with you really deeply. And I said to one to my son the other day. I said to him, he's only 10, and we were talking about football, and his right foot is great, and his left foot isn't. And I said to him in the car, um, "What's the biggest room for improvement?" And he said, "The kitchen." And I said, "No, what's the biggest room for improvement? Your left foot compared to your right foot." And he couldn't make head or tail of what I meant. I said, "It's room for improvement. That's the biggest room." And I quite like that saying to him. But now he looks at me when I say it and he laughs
Hmm.
because things like that strike me you know of just making yourself better in a way that doesn't life's challenging enough. The modern world is crazily mad, isn't it? With everything to do with social media, the interaction with people on a general basis or daily basis. I find all that so more intriguing. And look, when you're in that world of, celebrity type, let's remember in 1988, 90, we were like a rock band with the Republic of Ireland team. We just we enjoyed all the going out and meeting different people and laughing, and so you meet a lot of people, and that's lovely. But there's also times where you meet it takes you down the wrong direction.
Yeah. Um, you were you've been through the ringer, obviously, over the last 15 years in a big way, and a condensed version, not to make you retell the whole thing, and people can watch the documentary, but a condensed version is your second marriage to Virginia ended in divorce, and I think the agreement was, well, okay, you can go to the French mainland with the three kids once I
Yeah.
visitation rights, and she went to Tahiti with her mother and her family. And the legal argument put forward there was, well, listen, we're a colony, that's France. And what ensued was a very expensive, stressful, heartbreaking legal battle. And in effect, you didn't see your children for a decade. I think you talked about not
Yeah.
seeing Josh from the age of 6 through until 16. And very sadly, especially for the children, of course, Virginia passed away. And that has kind of freed things up. And um, I guess a reconciliation was about to ensue when I spoke to you. And in the documentary, there's a lovely photo of you with everyone at Christmas at the
Yeah.
end. How have you kind of worked through what the hell happened over the last 15 years in your head? Because it's every parent's worst nightmare in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, look, loads of people split up. The divorce rate, especially with sport, is very high. It's I'm led to believe it's just over 50% anyway. So obviously I split up in 2008, come nine, and it never ended. So just before the final year of Virginia's life, she was still pursuing me in the courts. And I'd had three legal battles with her. I won every one, and it cost me a fortune. Okay. And then there was also, obviously, the most hardest things to deal with was the relationship with my three children. Now, I had a very close relationship with William, who was my second oldest, but I hadn't seen Josh and Maeva from 2013 until, well, when did I see them? So just after Virginia died, things opened up. And then the story got bigger, and there was things I was unaware of, and but many, many different problems. And the expense of that divorce was literally, thousands and thousands every month. And then when she went to Tahiti, it made another major issue because I have a solicitor in England, but because it was France and I tried to challenge to see my children, I was told I would have to take another solicitor in France to then deal with Tahiti. And my solicitor in England said, it'll bankrupt you. You won't. You'll lose everything. He said, because you will not be able to afford the court system in England, the court system in France, two solicitors, and just added costs to everything. He said, you will not survive that. He said, so I advise you not to challenge the rights for your children to come back because she will never leave. You can't force her to leave Tahiti. So that was a really challenging period of my life. And it caused, imagine everything you're working for to just to keep yourself going. You're knowing that it's going out the door. And it was all so unnecessary because it wasn't down to unpaid alimony. It was down to seeing my children. And if I gave you, Joe, if I told you the cost of Tahiti, each child's flight was between 2 and 3 thousand euros. So if I saw my children twice a year, and obviously they'd be there for 2 weeks, I was looking at the best part of 20,000 just on travel. That's without cost of maintenance and everything else. And it was just not sustainable. Once you finished your career, unfortunately, my ex-wife acted like I was still playing football. That I'm getting these huge amounts of money, which I wasn't. I'm in the media world. You can't compare the media world to playing football unless you're, I don't know, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, or Thierry Henry, and they're getting, Roy Keane, they're getting absolute fortunes in the media world. You earn a living and it's a nice living, don't get me wrong. But it's not even in comparison with a football career. Even going back when my football career ended in 2000, I couldn't earn that type of money after my career again. So it was such a challenging period for me, and I never felt I was getting out of it, Joe.
Hmm.
That was the biggest problem. It felt like a ever decreasing circle that I was just never getting out of that problem because there was issues of like, well, William's going to go to university and he's going to study on. So William, the second oldest, and then Josh, all going to do university, and still payments are going to go into their mid-20s and beyond because the French system is that they stay longer in university and takes longer to get to some of the jobs that they're trying to qualify for. So it felt like it was never ending, and I just felt like I couldn't move forward.
And to not see them is heartbreaking. It's such precious time. You know, because you
Yeah,
to not from 6 to 16 to just be
yeah.
robbed of that. Like at any point, maybe it's simplistic. Did you just think, well, I'm just flying to Tahiti and I'm just turning up on the door and we have to sort this
No,
out?
that would have been tricky, Joe, because Virginia, from some of the things that happened during that time, would have been quite capable of getting me arrested. Okay. Now, you could argue for what reason, but I was very conscious that Virginia could charge me with something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was always challenging me on something.
She
The
had she
biggest
had
thing,
made
Joe,
allegations before, which were then dropped
yes,
subsequently.
allegations that were
Yeah, yeah,
unfounded, and
yeah.
and just things like that. She could say she was afraid, and the
Okay.
biggest thing is, look, William I saw, and William left, but she wouldn't let William come back to me and Joe. She only would allow William to go back to France and stay with his grandfather.
Yeah.
So I looked after William all that time, but he was travelling from Normandy and to London quite often, which was an easy journey. Caen to London was an hour flight,
Yeah.
so that was quite easy. But I hadn't seen Josh, who left England at, what age was Josh when he left? In 13, he would have been about five, something like that, five. So maybe 5 or 6. So I hadn't seen Josh and I could never get on a call with Josh. She wouldn't allow him. So William would, when he was in Tahiti, he would come on the laptop when his mum wasn't there, and Josh would appear. But he could only come on with William when his mum wasn't there. So it was really difficult for Josh. We're talking about a young boy of 9, 10 into his early teens. And this was the sort of setup that I was dealing with. And also Miva hadn't spoke to me, but one of the most amazing things was last Christmas, when they all came across and we have a massive Christmas sort of gathering, and Miva was just incredible. I was so concerned how she would be affected, and she just said, "Sorry, Dad." And she saw me. She said, "Sorry, Dad, but if I'd have gone against Mum, she would have made me felt like a traitor to her." She said, "And I know that I knew I'd see you again, and then I could explain myself why I erred on the side of Mum when she knew what was going on." And she just said, "I just couldn't." And also in her final, she said in her final year of her life that she knew Mum was dying. So there was this issue for Miva as well, and which I, totally understand. And I just said to her, "Miva, don't worry, I'm never going to hark back what's happened over the last 10 or so years. So just let's move forward." Miva's getting married next year. We're going to Tahiti, me, Joe, Angel, and Rocco, and the kids, and others, Michael and Teddy, looking to go. So it was a big line in the sand, but a very damaging period for not me, because, well, it obviously did,
Mm.
but damaging for everybody around me. It affected my mum, it affected my sister, and their husband, and all the family regarding me, because they all wanted to see Miva, Josh, and Wills.
Of course. It's so poignant then when people see the documentary on Monday, because at different parts of the doc you read lines from your autobiography, and this is obviously written, what, 25 years ago now, 20 plus years ago
Yeah,
easily? Yeah,
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 Joe,
yeah.
about
And
25,
one of the lines at the start, and we see footage of you and Maiva in the car, you say, "My daughter Maiva is 5 years old. When she throws her arms around me and calls me Papa, it is easily the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me."
yeah.
Just, in the
Yeah,
context of what happens then, it's a
yeah,
lot, yeah.
it was.
How did you cope? Say during that 10 years, the money, the sense this never ends, but also like I'm losing time I can't get back. Like I wouldn't cope very well with that.
No,
Vices to
well,
beat the
I'll
band
be
or
honest with
therapy or
you. I did go, Joe. I did do some therapy. Joe had we'd chatted about it, and she said you always take it on your shoulders. Most things, like maybe you need a bit of help, and of course, like most of us, we all go, "No, I can do, so I can sort it out." And then I realised I couldn't. I did need the Tahiti period when they first left was very,
yeah,
very difficult, because I knew there was no good outcome for a long time in that scenario. Um, so that in itself was tricky. I I think, I mean, look, me and Joe, we rock and rolled over this, because we never felt, well, I never got married me and Joe never got married to 2019. We were together over 10 years. And because I had been affected quite clearly by what had happened in the past. And then me being me, we chatted, and Joe said to we, what, we got a son together, and what are we doing? Are we just going to stay like this? And it felt like I had to move forward. So one day I came home after chatting, and I went, all right then, one for the road. And
You all
that's
romantic.
but she knew what I meant. She
Yeah.
knew what I meant. She knew that, oh, this bloody daft bugger, you stupid. And we got married in 2019 in Mauritius, and that that changed a lot as well, because I was stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I was the common denominator. For whatever reasons, who was at fault, I was still part of that. So it wasn't like I just got married after a year and a half of knowing Joe and then going, oh right, get married. It wasn't. It was we're literally 10 years down the line. We've been together since 2009. So we're now together 16 years. So
Yeah.
it's
Third time's a charm.
Joe. If Joe was here now, she'd say to you, there was massive challenges along the way.
Mm.
But Joe, as a person, she deals with the smaller things quite more. Smaller things in life, she'll get more upset about or more. But the big things, she's brilliant on. Where I just feel like she'll take it all on board. Do you know
Okay.
what I mean?
Okay.
And say, not
Interesting.
worry about that. But if some rubbish hadn't been taken down or something, she'd go, bloody hell, she'd react more to that than if I got £1,000 fine and a £20 fine. She'd have a go at me about the £20 fine.
Yeah. I like this country loves you, as you know, I think, and it's because of that time, which we'll talk about in a moment, and it's also just your personality. I mean, you like ebullient and happy and open and funny and everything else. And I was struck. There was an interview you did a couple of years ago with Paul Kimmage, and he asked you how you feel about yourself now. And a line I thought you said, which was interesting, you said you feel pretty good, but you said Joe says I laugh less. Joe says I laugh less. Now maybe that's just everybody when they get a bit older. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, look, she's been with me for all of it, so she's seen some of you know, it's not a normal story, is it? Imagine you, Joe. I don't know how many kids you got or whatever.
I have a 2 year old and a 6 month old, and honestly, everything you've talked about there, I find it unimaginable.
Yeah, exactly. So if I said to you, your wife come home one day and said, uh, "I'm off," and then said she's going to another part of Ireland or
Yeah,
wherever,
yeah.
and then one day says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to Australia and I'm moving out and I'm leaving next week." And
But that's
you
why,
can't imagine that sort
yeah,
of scenario.
and that's why I sort of said, how did you? I think I'd ache. I think I'd physically ache, and every day I'd be so angry. Like not,
Well, I was.
yeah, of
I was.
course. And
Yeah, I
anger
was.
has to go somewhere. I don't know what I'd do with it all.
No, I knew that. Funny enough, I witnessed through a pal of mine when he split up with his wife, and he'd want me to go out with him when he first, a very close friend. I've been really good mates with him. When he first broke up with his wife, he'd want me to go out, but he wanted me to go out, and he would always try and have a fight. So somewhere along the night, he would lose it with someone, and I had to pull him aside and like, come on, we're going out, we're having a few beers. And you could see he really wanted to have a real tear up with someone. And and that stuck with me. And that again, I get it because it makes you feel like that. That anyone says anything, you're straight away, you're fiery, and your reaction is wrong, you know? But I suppose that's just normal, Joe. I don't
Mm.
know.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say it is. What we've talked about there is heavy, and that is
Yeah,
part of, and that's it's real. I did really enjoy watching you as a younger footballer and watching the football side of it
yeah,
as well. So Gillingham through the 80s, Millwall 87. Then I want to talk to you about Villa and Celtic and Chelsea. And of course, people, I think, in the main know about this amazing Indian summer over in France.
yeah.
I watched some of the footage of your headers, and I heard, Jack Charlton being interviewed by Terry Wogan as one of the pieces of archive. And he says, well, why wouldn't I play the way I play? I've got the two maybe best headers of the ball in Europe, if not the world. Geez, some of the headers you scored. Like,
Yeah,
there's the bullets, but then there's like, little dinky balls in, not much pace in the ball, and whatever you're doing with your timing and your neck, you're able to get power on it. It was great seeing you kind of in your heyday doing your thing, ball in
yeah.
the air. So,
Well, it was
yeah,
Joe. I
let's
wouldn't
talk
have
about all
played.
that.
Well, I wouldn't have made being a professional footballer if there wasn't heading in the game. Let's get that right, okay?
Okay.
It was my biggest strength
Yeah.
and something I practiced on for many years as a youngster. It was quite ironic. The start of last week, where my nan and granddad lived, and it was on a documentary. It was in Ireland, which was The Boys in Green. Was a wall in the Elephant and Castle, when on the estate called the Rockingham Estate in South London, where I used to just practice headers all the time. And now they've got a plaque on that wall. And it's got Tony Cascarino used to practice headers on this wall. So it's a very Millwall area.
Right.
But
That's
I
great.
drove up there on Monday because I was going to Millwall. I was being honoured at Millwall. And I drove there. I thought, I've got to go and see this plaque if it's really there. Because I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a heritage plaque. It's more of an estate where someone's gone. Tony Cascarino used to practice his head in here on this wall, and it's got a plaque on the wall, which was really, really. Do you know what? It probably gave me as much pleasure as anything I've ever done. That on this Rockingham estate, it
That's
was this
amazing.
plaque on the wall. It was just
So I think I'm like the majority of sane people in that growing up and doing football training, ball at the feet, loved it, passing drills, shooting drills, amazing. Okay, now we're practicing our headers. It's like, oh, this. And some adult throw me a ball and me misheading it and it hurts and it's just, you know what I mean? Miserable. I can't imagine practicing headers voluntarily. So why,
yeah.
what was it you liked about it?
Um, well, I was good at it, and I could do a hell of a big number heading against the wall without the ball dropping. And then I could do different types of headers. I could loopy headers, and different distances. If you get close to the wall, it's all close up heading, and then as you go yard back, I could get like 3, 4 yards away and do longer headers. So I was very confident with my headers, and
Mm,
I tried to explain this in an article I did for the Times a few years back, and that heading is like having a left foot and a right foot. Some people are stronger on the left side of their head than the right side. And obviously, that in itself, I could, if I had, look, let's not forget as well, I had great crossers of the ball. I had people like Dennis Irwin, Chrissy Morris, Steve Staunton, Kevin Sheedy, who were crossing the ball. So I had great crossers of the ball. And I was very strong at attacking it. I love to, my goal against England was a prime example of me running and just I'm challenging. I think it's Mark Wright and Tony Adams are the two centre halves, two dominant lads in the air, and I've attacked it and knowing that I could get hurt here, but I'm going to go with it with all my might, and I worked really hard on it,
mm,
and that was and I in the documentary I said Keith Peacock actually said he decided to give me a 1 year contract on one thing he saw in literally a 5 second, you know, watching from the sidelines. I'm going to take him for a year.
yeah.
I'm going to take well, that one thing he did, and that was a cross that came in for the right. Stevie Bruce, who was the centre half, because I played for the reserves against Gillingham first team, because Stevie Bruce was there as a pro at that time and the start of his career. And I've attacked it, won the header, and I've took Bruce out as well, with my challenge. And he said, that was why I took you for a year. There was no other reason to take you.
Yeah.
I just saw that you were anyone who could do that to Steve Bruce could cause problems.
Yeah. We'll polish this up. Yeah.
Yeah, which because exactly what you said, Joe. I was incredibly raw as a teenager, fearless. I mean, I'd have loved to have played Gaelic, hurling. I'd have loved all that because I threw myself in it, and with Irish sport that rugby, all of them sports. But I was football was my love more
Mm.
than all the other sports.
Yeah. So the craft of heading, the different spins you put in it, back post, all I can do is loop it here, so I know how to loop it. So you can, that kind of stuff um sung to you a little bit. It's really interesting that three clubs in the space of 4 years in the 90s period, where
Yeah,
it's Aston Villa, Celtic under Liam Brady, as you mentioned, both for 1.1 million pounds sterling, a club record for both clubs at the time. So big money for big striker, big pressure, and then Chelsea. So that was between 1990 and 1994. Kind of peak years in many ways, or should have been. And it was interesting in the documentary. There were two contrasting maybe theories as to why it didn't work out or what was going on. There was one where it was like that voice of doubt was there, or
yeah,
like that you're crap, you're not at this level, you're that kind of thing. But then equally, it was interesting. You talked in the documentary about, well, arrogance might be too strong, but like I've been signed for 1 million plus. Like I don't need to train, or I'm not training with the same intensity. I'll just go out and perform. And obviously, it doesn't work like that. And I would have thought that little bit of I don't need to work as hard as I was is not totally compatible with your rubbish.
Yeah. Couple of things there, Joe, is that I'd never had criticism for the first 7 years of my career. So at Gillingham into Millwall, I'd never had criticism.
Yeah.
And people would say, oh, well, you go to a big club. And I say, look, if you can play in front of Millwall fans, you can play anywhere because they're pretty hostile, and they certainly vent their anger at you if you're not doing it. I signed for Celtic, and so, oh, sorry, I signed for Villa on a 1.1 million. Remember, me and Teddy Sheringham were playing together, and I went first, not Teddy.
Okay.
So, that in itself. And I joined, and Graham Taylor, when I signed, I asked him the question of, because it was being mooted that he'll take the England job. He could take the England job because it was the old March transfer deadline. So I asked him in the meeting in March, with 10 games to go that season, are you going to be here in the summer with the England job? And he went, I will definitely be here. So I said, if you're here, I'll sign, because I was his signing. And of course, he left in the summer and took on England. So, that was a start. I got injured. I tore my cartilage at Aston Villa in the season after. So I've joined in March, and then I had my first pre-season in June, July with Villa under Joseph Venglos, and then we started the campaign. I started quite well, and then I played a European game, and I tore my cartilage in a game, and that started to become a bit of an issue over time. That wasn't an excuse, but I wasn't quite up to speed.
Yeah.
And then the move come. Ron Atkinson walked in, Joe. He walked in at the club the season after, and he walked in and he said, I'm bringing in Big Cyril Regis. You can go. I've agreed a fee with Celtic.
Okay.
And I was talking to Southampton at the time as well. And he went, you can go. We'll pay you what you owe you, and you can go. And that was it until I was off to Celtic. But I didn't have a good pre-season at Celtic. I was a bit, when you see players, Caicedo or Isaac goes to a move. I mean, these are top players. So I'm not comparing myself with them. I'm just saying,
Sure.
not having the preparation of the pre-season of how hard it has to be for you to get your season money in the bank, they always called it, your pre-season, to carry you through. And I went to Celtic. I was £6 overweight on my playing weight when I joined Celtic, and I played immediately. Didn't play well. And it's also rocky in my personal life as well when I went. And there was loads of challenges at Celtic for me, and I just didn't play. I couldn't get going at all, and I was friends with Liam Brady, which was awkward. Me and Liam had private drinks together. Or said private drinks, go out for a coffee, sit down and chat. And Liam was getting frustrated, I could tell, but I also didn't want to let him down. And I walked into his office one day and just said, if we can, I'd like to go back to London. It's not working. And he was upset with me for not trying to work it out. And I sort of threw in the towel myself at that period, which I say regrets, because you make decisions with, there is a bit of logic around why. And that's why it didn't go well. And then I joined Chelsea, and I got booed on my debut, Joe, at Chelsea. Right? They announced the team, and Chelsea's has an association with Glasgow Rangers. And also I was taking the place of Kerry Dixon, who was the legend there of Kerry, but had seen better days and had injuries. So I then take his place, and they announced the team against Crystal Palace on my first game at the Bridge, and I get booed. And it's like, wow, I remember thinking, Dennis Wise ran up to me and said, they fucking love you here, didn't they? Laughing, run straight up to me. And I've gone, you fucking little fuck. But and excuse my French, but it was the way he did it. And I scored that day. And in the papers, I was given the best mark of all the Chelsea players. Not that that means anything.
Yeah.
But we then play Leeds away. I got booed again. So I've had this decent first game, scored a goal, played Leeds away not long after, got stick. That was the challenge for me, and that affected me enormously. But do you know, the best thing that ever happened to me was the move to Marseille, because the World Cup had gone badly for me. I got injured during the World Cup, and it was an incredible challenge. I had no club. Come back from World Cup, I got a World Cup. I'd had interest, but no more than that. But the Marseille link came about in bizarre circumstances, and that was my, lottery win. I don't mean financially. I mean just the
Yeah.
opportunity
Yeah.
to go to a club of the stature of Marseille, because I would never have gone there in any other reasons, that they were under an embargo and there was been relegated. So there was lots of reasons.
Yeah.
But I went there and I realised I'm not good at being one of the lads. And I mean that as in, I'll give you a quick explanation. Me and Teddy Sheridan went to Lanzarote when we were players at Millwall. And I always put on weight quite easy. So I went on the razzle and had a bit of fun. Me and Teddy roomed together. So I decided that week with Teddy, I'm going to eat everything he eats and drinks exactly the same as him. Just when we went out, drink like he did. And when he had food, that I'm going to eat the same time, same meals. We came back after that week. He'd lost £2 and I'd put on 6. So it was like, well, this is crazy, how it worked out. And I I really battled that. I realised that I couldn't be one of the lads, as in going out having a laugh, and we did it with Ireland, and it's been well documented that. But at club football at that time as well, Joe, that there was, after training, going to play golf or going to play snooker and having a few beers, and that was quite common everywhere. You'd have been, it would have been an oddity not to do it at that particular time. Everyone was doing it, so I realised it wasn't good for me to be one of the lads. So I joined Marseille, and now I'm vulnerable. I'm in a dressing room, don't speak the language, and I'm just quiet as a mouse. But one thing I can do is love training hard and training and not being one of the lads. And I eventually became one of the lads, but it was a different mentality in Marseille. Drink, and they all smoked. They all smoke. They'd be behind the bus after a game. There'd be 8 players there, all having a cigarette, having chatting. But they frowned upon drinking, where we would go, they're smoking. Can you believe they're smoking? And they'd laugh and say, you Irish boys and you English boys drink.
Mm.
So it was quite funny.
Yeah. And I'd forgotten again till I watched it last night. Like Marseille, I think people know Marseille went really well and lots of goals. And then you even say yourself at Nancy, which followed, maybe you played some of the best football of your career. So
Yeah.
that French sojourn where you're a real professional and really training, so that's where you kind of, God, this is the player I was meant to be almost.
Do you know, Joe? People would come over and see me. Like Andy Townsend came over
Yeah.
and a few others, and I said, "You look ill." Everyone said to me, "You
Right.
look ill," and I was in the best shape of my life.
Lean.
You know, and I was at Nancy. I trained incredibly hard. The coach was called Laszlo Bologna, and he won the European Cup in '86 for Steaua Bucharest against Barcelona. He was in that Champions League or European Cup winning team
Yeah.
at that time. And he said to me when I was 34, you know, how long you signed for? I said 2 years. He said, you'll play for 4. And after I was laughed because I didn't think I did play for 4. And by the way, training. His idea was the older you get, it isn't putting your feet up. You have to train harder than the younger lads just to keep up with them.
Okay.
That was his idea. And he trained me harder than the younger lads. He'd say, you're doing extra just to keep up. Because he said they can run all day, naturally being younger. He says you can't.
Mm.
So if you want to compete with them, you've got to work harder than them.
Interesting. Goes against the conventional wisdom, perhaps. But
Absolutely,
yeah, it makes
totally.
sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel much more at peace with your career because of that French experience? It would have been tough if no one had come in for you
Yes,
post '94 and you were like, maybe I'm on the scrap heap here. That would have been tough. Whereas it must leave a lovely aftertaste for you.
absolutely. The only thing, and I try not to be regretful,
Sure.
is that mentality. If I'd have been, I was too immature, Joe. I was too immature, you know, to be a serious pro, that dedicates to his career. Whether you're an athlete or a swimmer or a boxer, dedication to what you do is pays with huge results. And look, unfortunate injuries, that's another, that's just unfortunate, people getting injured in sport. But that was it was lovely having the ending of that 6 years in France, because if I'd have ended and gone to Marseille and I'd have failed and just come back and gone non-league,
Yeah.
I'm not even a talking story, you know. But the fact I've gone with the link of Marseille and the bizarre episodes that were happening to the, just remember 1993, Marseille were European champions. So this was a bizarre episode anyway. And the people I met along the way, you know, just I've, you know, it's nice when Paul Kimmage done the book with me, and he realised this was such an odd story. Such it's not, you know, there's no stories that are the same, but he found it really bizarre and looks back and think what a crazy period that was for me. And likewise with Sean, he said he swore at me saying, "Do you realise what effing career you've had?"
Yeah.
Because I would be less than, well, yeah, I've done all right at times, and other times it was difficult.
I think you're still the oldest player to score a hat trick in Ligue 1.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, cling on to that for a few more years.
Yeah. On that, Joe, do you want a quick funny story?
Sure, yeah.
Me and Sheringham challenged on everything at Millwall. Like, so if I got 22 goals, he always got 23. So he outdone me. And then I got the first move to in front of him on. I went to Villa, and he eventually went to Forest after. And so between all our mates, you know, they always tell me, "Oh, Cass, he's always second," and that laughing, you know, it's always Ted first and what he achieved and all this. And then I posted up oldest player on the WhatsApp group, oldest player to get a hat trick. You know, so I'm like laughing. 37 years and so 100 and odd days, and then immediately flashed up Ted's oldest player in English football to get a hat trick in the top times. Teddy Sheringham come. It was literally come straight above me. Do you know what I mean?
Stop.
And he'd
He
outdone
still
me
looks about
brilliantly.
40 as well. I mean,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
won't
But it was,
age.
you know, funny.
Um, you had the reunion with the Irish boys earlier
Yeah,
this year, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
And they were on the Late Late Show, and it was even just seeing you all on stage together. It was just a
Well, I wasn't
reminder.
there in Dublin. I came to
You were in
the second
Cork,
part. I was
yeah,
in
yeah,
Cork.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But even seeing all the, that good group of them up on stage in Dublin, like there's a certain chemistry in that group.
yeah.
I know there's rose tinted glasses and there's nostalgia, and it helps when you do something for the country that's never been done before. There is all of that which is projected onto them, but there is a certain chemistry in the group. It does seem like a lot of special people. What are
Yeah,
your
they
like?
were.
What are your strongest memories of it, or your feelings about it now, or just give us a kind of an overview of where that kind of sits in your world, what you achieved with those players and that time, and it was just all so magical.
Well, first of all, there was a lot of great players as well. You know,
Sure,
I
yeah,
roomed early on in my career with Ireland with Frank Stapleton on my first international in Switzerland, and then Liam Brady. And I watched Liam
okay,
Brady play a lot of football at Arsenal because my friend of mine was a real, real Arsenal Gunners fan, and I used to watch Brady. I remember rooming with Liam, and I'm playing Kaluki, which is a London card game against Liam. And I'm looking at him thinking, I can't believe I'm sitting opposite Liam Brady. And he's at Juve at the time. And we're playing cards and we're in a room. And like a few years back, I'm standing on terraces admiring Liam Brady. But do you know what? From the 88 squad to 90 to 94, and beyond. There was great lads afterwards, but there was a period of that 88 to 94, just an amazing group of players. Just lads you'd want to go and have a drink with without big football. You know, just chatting, laughing. No one was above their station. You know, and if you did, you got brought down pretty quickly.
yeah,
Just really good lads. And to a man, we celebrated together nearly always. You know, if we had an international and there might be, say, 22, 23 players in, I guarantee you'd get about 18 going out after the game, at least, and sometimes more than that. And we'd go out and we just was if I meet them tomorrow, it's like yesterday. You know, I met the boys in Cork and I hadn't seen Kevin Sheedy for a while, and seen Stan, Steve Staunton, Ronnie Whelan, Aldo, Ray Houghton, and many, many others. Mick McCarthy. I mean, I see Mick because he doesn't live too far away from me. So I bump into Mick every now and again. I bump into Andy quite a lot as well, Townsend. But when I see them, it's just like incredible.
yeah,
Bernie Saban, I haven't seen forever.
yeah.
Last time I saw Bernie, he was answering the phone, talking to his dog on the phone, leaving a message for his dog. You know, and I roomed with Bernie, and I said to him, and he went, because people don't believe me,
Mm,
but he used to phone his dog from his room, and that he'd go onto answer machine, and he'd leave a message for the dog because it was in the house.
mm.
And I used to think, that can't be true. And he said, no, no, I did. That was, the dog was in the house. So you know, when you're laughing, David Kelly, Chrissy Morris, I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
Chrissy Morris, I haven't seen since Glasgow when he had that big episode. Do you remember when he got caught in the papers and he just, I hadn't seen Chris since then,
Wow.
you know. So we were straight away, we were talking about, I dropped him off at his house in Glasgow and his wife, he was going in to face the music with his wife. I took him back to his house and he went, do you want to come in? And I went, I don't think I should, Chris. Because that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was thinking that that might calm it down. But it just, you know, these
What
amazing moments with these guys.
what's it like seeing them all again in Cork when you walk into the room and they're just there
Couldn't
and
wait, Joe. You know, when you get anxious and like you think, I can't wait to see them. See them. And I see a few of them along
sure,
the
sure,
way.
sure.
Bump into a few of them on the way just via the media. But I just couldn't wait. And I know that they felt the same about me and the others, you know,
Yeah.
just like meeting up, giving each other an hug, laughing. And I knew exactly every story that was going to come out, you know, from Italy, what
Yeah.
happened, you know, there, or 94. And all these stories were coming out, but they were repeated from 30 years ago.
Yeah. And as funny as
Exactly.
ever, because I remember it's probably as far back now as Euro 2012, and the radio show I worked for, we were doing a live show in Dublin, and two of the guests were Packy Bonner and Niall Quinn,
Mm.
and it's just a small moment. They wouldn't mind me saying, I'm sure, but like they're waiting backstage, and I think Niall's there first, and Packy gets there, and but they're sort of over in the corner when Packy first walks in. They're not kind of in the full glare of everyone. They're kind of a private hello. Honestly, they gave each other such a hug.
Yeah,
But like didn't let go. I mean, it wasn't like a big bear. It wasn't like a whoa 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 come here. It was like a tactile. There was such a depth to it. It's hard
yeah,
to
yeah.
articulate, but it was like a genteel kind of hug, and they held on for a good 10 seconds and looked at each other. This kind of thing it kind of spoke of the depths, I suppose.
Yeah, it was profound, you know, so deep at times.
Yeah,
And I laugh sometimes on the WhatsApp groups because we have the 90s reunion and there's kisses from other players to other players, like, you know, like you just normally you just put a kiss on the air. But it's they are an amazing bunch, and there's so many of them. I would have missed out a few,
yeah,
you know, players of that time. And obviously Jack was the, you know, the guy that sort of led us, but didn't have much time for us. He all wanted to do was get away from us and go fishing and come back. He didn't love the time, you know, playing Trivial Pursuit with Jack, and he'd be the staff against the players, and then you know, the priest would be there, and he'd be the adjudicator, and with that. Jack would lose it with the priest and be swearing at the priest, and we'd all be laughing. Don't let them fuckers wind you up there, you know, like because we'd all wind the priest up, you know. It was just hilariously funny,
yeah.
and you know, you sort of came away from games and think the game got in the way
Mm.
from the fun, you know.
There's a great so there's kind of a theme in the documentary where you and Andy Townsend are sort of in conversation with each other. I,
Yeah.
I hadn't actually fully appreciated you knew each other from the age of 10, 11. And you sort of remind him of what he said in the
Oh,
penalty shootout. Ray Houghton's like, "Are you boys taking one?"
and he's incredibly witty, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
He's got an incredible sense of humor, Andy. He's got a really razor sharp tongue. So he was always doing practical jokes, especially on me. You know, he did it on me a number of times. And that was the moment in the World Cup 90. And literally, because we didn't know the penalty takers, we knew we had three. We knew that Ray, Andy, and Sheeds were going to take one, but there was two missing. And McGrath gets asked, and McGrath, you know, just didn't want to take one full stop,
yeah.
which, you know, Paul, I know, would have scored. You know, he would have, but he didn't want one.
Mm.
And then it got left with Ray asking me, would I take one? And I sort of hummed and hawed, and he said, "You're a man or a mouse." And then Andy from nowhere went, "Pass the cheese." And we're all in the centre circle. And with this great mad moment, you know, and of course I'm laughing with Andy, but I had them silly, crazy conversations. Do you know one of the highlights? I don't mention this in the film. One of the highlights was, and this typifies Andy, typical of him, right?
Yeah.
We're on Leeson Street and we're at Strings. Have you remember the Strings on Leeson Street?
Not
The bar
really,
never
no.
Big Joe.
No.
It would have probably it was in the 90s, or sort of late 80s and 90s.
Okay.
We went to these strings, and you had to go downstairs in Leeson Street into a nightclub, and we knew the owner. And we went down there after a game, and we're there. And as we walked to go past, there was a homeless guy just sitting there and asking for money and whatever. And we walked down, we grabbed a drink, and Andy went, "Come on, get a bottle of champagne." So got a bottle of champagne, go back up, and the homeless guy had a guitar. And Andy walked up and said, "Give us a guitar. Here's a bottle of champagne. We'll share it together. We'll get you some money." And Andy starts playing, and I start singing, like as we're on this nightclub, and people are walking past and saying, "Ah, it's Cascarino," and we're trying to get them to leave a bit of money for the guy. You know what I mean? We're all chipping in, and that was Andy. He would think of these mad moments where two Irish players are actually standing at the top of a nightclub stairs, playing the guitar and singing. And I always would sing American Pie. You know what I mean? That was my go-to one, American Pie, because I knew most of the words. But it was a funny moment, and that sort of typified him.
I can imagine trying to go home and explain to someone, no, I honestly did see it was Andy Townsend, and
Well, there was the ones with the abracadabra, being in the abracadabra.
yeah. You boys probably do well to dodge camera phones, actually, in hindsight.
Yeah, there would have been a bit of an outcry in the mod. Look, football's gone. Look, Joe, whatever we say,
Yeah.
I played, and I said this before, I played in the greatest period of football for me.
You think, do you? Because I do wonder if you look at like the 350 grand a week types now and think, oh, that would be very nice, though.
Yeah, cool. Of course, it's mad, the money, but to have the freedom and enjoy like a fan at times as well, and be loved by the Irish fans were amazing, traveling around the all different countries to follow us. Being in a bar at Malta and seeing John Aldridge getting crowd surfed across the bar when we qualified, and we're all with the Irish fans, and we're all seeing Aldo getting crowd surfed. So all them experiences. And
Yeah.
look, we all earn good money. It's a little bit of a myth about we didn't earn. Of course, we didn't earn the money they're getting now, but we all done. And I'll give you an example. When I left Chelsea, I was on sort of £6,500, £7,000 a week in '94. I signed from Marseille, and my contract was worth £12,000 a week. So this is 1994. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, accelerated very quickly. I had different bonuses, but it worked out at them sort of sums of money. So we done okay. Look, we can never ever understand salaries in football. No one's going to make sense of it at all. Market forces tell you that's what you get paid. Is that any different from a guy working on TV who gets paid 2 million a year, 5 million a year? In America, you get people earning 100 million a year. Is it right? I've sort of said, just imagine how much money footballers pay into the income tax system. Now, if a player's earning 100 grand a week, he's putting into the system £45,000 a week.
True.
Now, there is the opposite, it's unfair. And I get it. I understand everything about the logic of how people feel about it. Of course it's gross. Of course it is. It's obscene money.
Our time's coming to a close here. Again, the documentary's on Monday evening, RTE 1 at 9:35, and I'm sure people can watch it then on the player afterwards. Anyone who you need no introduction to anyone, but even just listening to you for the last 50 odd minutes, won't be shocked to hear that you've had a very successful broadcasting career. Like, talk sport for kind of like, I know you're doing the weekends maybe since 2018 or so, but the guts of like maybe longer than you've been a footballer, you've been working on radio, and then the London Times as well, and the podcast there. Is that something that you really, really enjoy and love doing, or has there been given what we talked about at the start of the show, like a financial push? I just got to keep working, and I'm up at 6 a.m. and 4 a.m. and that's just it. Or
no, I love it, Joe.
You do, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I do love doing it. Look, I ain't had a bad game since 2000.
You're very good at it, though. Like I read your column just the other week on Florian Wirtz, and it's really good opinion and laid out very well. And then, like, as a broadcaster, you're just such a brilliant communicator, engaging, bit of fun.
There is a reason, Joe.
Yeah, go on.
There's a reason, and it goes back to something I said earlier. I realised that my football career was full of, at the end, why it was successful, of how much dedication I put towards my career, and I've basically done that. My idea when I came into media, and I've been with the Times 25 years,
Mm,
was that no one's ever going to accuse me of being lazy. Whether you agree with me or disagree with what I'm doing or saying, that's fine.
yeah.
But I'm never ever going to be lazy. I'm not going to sit on my laurels. I'm not going to be one of the lads in the media. I'm going to do my job to the best, and that's always my first port of
Okay.
call.
Because there's
And that's
plenty of guys doing a column who are like, "What? Put me down for what I said a week ago about him. Good luck. Bye."
yeah, yeah. There is an element of that, but I never ever will. Now I just felt that it's easy. That's now when I said to you at the very start of, you have to ask yourself why you failed. So if I did media and I'd failed, I would have gone, well, you didn't put in the dedication you need to. There's journalists and guys like yourself who do podcasts. No one knows all the homework you've done behind the scenes. All they know is that what you say, what you hear now.
Sure.
But I know that you, from the way you've spoke to me today, you've done your homework. Okay, it's not just the film. You've talked about things that very few people would know, and you're spot on the timelines. And so I'm immediately saying, well, I'm thinking in my head, Joe's done his own work. I'd even say, like I said to Sean, who did the film, I said, you were stalking me, Sean. You know more than what I knew about myself.
Mm.
But do you know what I mean? There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a professionalism that has to happen in certain. If you're in media, you have to do it.
And especially like you're on live radio on the weekend, you don't know what's going to happen on a Friday. You don't know where it's going to go, so you need to be ready to react to different
I have
things.
ideas though,
Yeah,
Joe. I was very. I'm a Liverpool fan, as you know. You know, I didn't buy into Liverpool start the season that they're going to be that great. I didn't buy, and that's why I went on the Sunday doing the column for the Monday. That Liverpool, and I spoke about it before they played Crystal Palace on radio, that I was really afraid, and I thought it was totally misleading their start of the season
yeah.
because their performances were not good. This wasn't a team that was going to win the title to me. This was a team that were getting away with it. And Liverpool fans, oh, great teams score late goals. And yeah, they tend to do that in the second half of the season when they grind out a result. They don't do it at the start. You know, most teams bulldoze their way through. And
Mm.
so I try to think a little bit out of the box as
Yeah.
well.
No, it comes across. Look, 25 years is some run. Very last one. Do you watch much of the Republic of Ireland these days? Like
Yeah,
the Hungary game, the Armenia
yeah,
games? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's going well.
yeah.
It's going well.
Um,
Jeez.
Do you know what the biggest thing for me was, that I really felt there was a bit of a turning point,
Yeah.
and then we play Hungary and we come back from behind, and then we go, you know, we get something out of a game, and thought the way that we played in the final minutes of the game of getting the ball in and attacking the ball, and just looked like I wanted teams to fear coming to Dublin, and knowing that can be a dangerous Irish team.
Yeah.
And then the Armenia performance happened, and it just took everybody by surprise. You know, even myself, I didn't think we would lose in the way we did. Mistakes, and just lost our way during the game. Unfortunately, it is easier than it's ever been to qualify, but we can't afford to keep missing tournaments. We can't. So we have to find a way. And that is like one step forward. I'd say two steps, I'd say 5 steps back.
Mm.
Because the Armenia one was just,
Yeah, it's bad.
I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No, there was huge. I mean, over here there was huge.
Expectations.
Yeah, our kind of cautious optimism on ahead of the Hungary game that like, hey, Merle Grimson, he's not talking lofty. We're going to play like Barcelona. There was a pragmatism, and he seemed like a sensible sort. And the players 20, 30, 40 caps into them now. Like this could be actually interesting. And then back down to planet Earth. So we'll see. By the way, with all these long throw-ins and booting the ball in from halfway line, I mean, you'd be at least on 400 grand a week these days.
I that's one thing I think. Yeah, I quite like them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I got asked to defend them as well, so it would
Wow.
have been a lot more defensive duties, because I was always pulled back into defensive scenarios with corners and long throws.
Yeah.
So I'd have been up and down the pitch, either end. But it's amazing, isn't it? We've had all this debate on the heading and how bad it is.
Yeah.
No one's actually done anything or column about actually long throws. Are they going to be more dangerous than corners? Because there's been loads of head clashes. So it's a strange dynamic how they've changed what's happening in football at the younger levels. But now, even more than ever, heading is top of the list of
Mm.
things of creating chances for.
That's a good point. There's a column in that maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Um, Again, the documentary is on Monday evening, 9:35 on RT1, and people can watch it on the players. I'm sure they will. Well done on it. Like it's beautifully shot and it's nostalgic
Yeah.
and it's you're so open as you have been in this interview, which we very much appreciate. So I'm sure people will really enjoy it and a lovely thing for you and the family to have for years to come. So really nice to talk to you again, Tony, and thanks so much. Best of luck with it.
My pleasure, Joe. Thank you.